Imagine walking through a busy city just as the day begins. The streets are waking up, people are moving, and life seems normal, until you notice something that stops you in your tracks. Some people here don't even have access to a basic toilet. It sounds unthinkable, but for millions around the world, clean air, safe water, and proper sanitation are still out of reach. In places where pollution fills the sky and rivers carry more waste than water, daily life becomes a constant challenge. So here's the real question. How did these conditions become normal, and what can be done to change them? In this video, we take you through the 15 dirtiest countries in the world, not just to see the problems, but to understand the people living through them, and why these environmental struggles are also human struggles. Number 15. Haiti. No trees, no toilets, no escape. Haiti, a nation grappling with a devastating combination of poor sanitation, environmental neglect, and health crises that hit women and vulnerable communities the hardest. To start with, over 70% of Haiti's population lacks access to basic sanitation facilities. That means for millions, particularly women, the street becomes the only option for defecation. Not only is this deeply undignified, but it also exposes them to severe health risks and personal safety threats. Open defecation isn't just a sanitation issue, it's a human rights issue. And the consequences are deadly. Since the cholera epidemic began in 2010, nearly 10,000 people have lost their lives, according to the World Health Organization. What's worse, in early 2024, Haiti reported a new spike in cases, signaling just how fragile the public health system remains. But that's just scratching the surface. Haiti's environmental crisis runs even deeper. The country has lost an alarming 98% of its forests, one of the highest deforestation rates in the world. Without trees to hold the soil together, heavy rains frequently trigger landslides and mudslides, swallowing homes and destroying lives. In fact, according to satellite data from Global Forest Watch, Haiti lost over 300 hectares of tree cover just in 2024 alone. And then there's the waste problem, or rather, the lack of a waste management system. Mountains of uncollected trash clog the streets, block drainage systems, and during rainy seasons lead to severe flooding. These floods aren't just inconvenient, they spread waterborne diseases like cholera, typhoid, and hepatitis A, creating a vicious cycle that traps the poor in unspeakable conditions. What's happening in Haiti is more than an environmental disaster. It's a public health emergency wrapped in a humanitarian crisis. And while global attention often drifts elsewhere, the people of Haiti continue to fight for survival in conditions that no human being should ever endure. This isn't just about pollution, it's about dignity, health, and hope. Number 14. Nepal. Smog. In the shadow of the Himalayas. Nepal, a breathtaking country known for its mountains and spiritual charm, but behind that beauty lies a sobering truth. Kathmandu, the capital, is drowning in pollution, both in the air and on the ground. Let's start with the air. Kathmandu's air quality index often shoots past 400, a level considered hazardous by global health standards. To put that into perspective, anything above 300 is a health emergency for everyone, not just vulnerable groups. In the winter of early 2025, data from IQ Air reported Kathmandu as one of the top 5 most polluted cities in the world, with fine particulate matter levels regularly exceeding World Health Organization limits by more than 10 times. Breathing here is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and there's no filter. But it's not just the air. Every single day, the city produces around 1,000 tons of waste, and much of it ends up right where it shouldn't, in the rivers. The Bagmati River, once a sacred, life-giving stream, has now become a toxic dumping ground, choked with plastic, sewage, and even industrial sludge. Imagine a river once used for religious rituals, now being a breeding ground for disease. So why is this happening? The root of the problem lies in a waste management system that's been left behind by rapid urban growth. Kathmandu's population has exploded in recent decades, and with that boom, the city's ability to process garbage just couldn't keep up. Garbage trucks often skip entire neighborhoods, and landfills are overflowing. As a result, the easiest path for trash is downhill, into rivers, streets, and eventually into the lungs of the city's residents. It's heartbreaking to see a city with such rich culture and history struggle to breathe, literally and figuratively. From hazardous smog to garbage-filled rivers, Nepal's capital is crying out for help, for investment, and for change. Because if we want to keep calling Kathmandu a jewel of the Himalayas, we need to start treating it like one. Number 13. Myanmar, plastic cities and poisoned waters. Myanmar, a country rich in culture and history, but now caught in the grip of an environmental crisis that's growing worse by the day. And nowhere is that crisis more visible than in the streets of Yangon, the country's largest city. Every corner of Yangon tells the same story. Plastic waste overflowing onto sidewalks, clogging drains, and piling up in canals. It's everywhere. Bottles, wrappers, bags, turning the city into what some locals now call a plastic jungle. According to a recent report from the Myanmar Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Conservation, in early 2,000 tons of solid waste each day, and more than half of it is plastic. Most of that never gets properly collected, let alone recycled. But the environmental damage doesn't end in the cities. Myanmar is also facing a deforestation disaster on a national scale. Every year, the country loses roughly 1,300,000 hectares of forest, placing it among the top 10 nations for deforestation globally. What does that mean for ordinary people? It means heavier floods, more deadly landslides, and an increasingly unstable climate. In fact, during the rainy season of 2024, over 500 people were displaced in Kachin state alone. And then there's the Irrawaddy River, the lifeline of Myanmar. Once a vital source of drinking water, food, and transport for millions, it is now severely contaminated. Industrial plants dump untreated chemicals directly into its waters, while raw sewage from residential areas flows in freely. A 2025 study by the United Nations Environment Program found that levels of lead and mercury in parts of the Irrawaddy are up to 5 times higher than acceptable standards, endangering both human life and aquatic ecosystem. So what we're seeing in Myanmar is more than just pollution. It's a chain reaction of environmental neglect. From plastic-choked cities to dying rivers and disappearing forests, the cost is high and rising fast. And unless urgent action is taken, the next generation might inherit a nation that's beautiful only in memory. Number 12. Iraq. Burning trash, toxic rivers. Iraq is facing a deepening environmental crisis that's threatening both public health and the natural ecosystem. In Baghdad, the air is often thick with dust, made worse by the widespread practice of burning garbage in the open. This combination has pushed the city's air quality to dangerously toxic levels, especially during the dry seasons. According to data from Iraq's Ministry of Environment in early 2025, Baghdad recorded particulate matter concentrations exceeding 100 micrograms per cubic meter, which is nearly 7 times the World Health Organization's safe limit. Breathing in this air daily is like slow poison, especially for children, the elderly, and those with chronic illnesses. But the pollution doesn't stop in the skies. It's all over the streets. Across Baghdad and other cities, garbage piles up in alleys, marketplaces, and even near schools due to an overwhelmed and underfunded waste collection system. Much of the trash ends up being burned or left to rot, releasing harmful toxins and attracting disease-carrying pests. It's a vicious cycle of neglect that puts millions at risk. Even more alarming are the conditions of Iraq's 2 most critical rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. These rivers once symbolized life and prosperity. Today, they're dumping grounds for untreated sewage, industrial waste, and agricultural runoff. A 2025 report by UNICEF revealed that over 60% of Iraq's wastewater is discharged untreated directly into these waterways. The result? Contaminated drinking water, a rise in waterborne diseases, and devastation for communities that rely on the rivers for farming and fishing. From the air to the land and the water, Iraq's environmental challenges are widespread and severe. If bold action isn't taken soon, both at the local and international level, the damage may become irreversible. Number 11. Philippines. Islands of plastic and smog. The Philippines, a country of stunning coastlines and vibrant culture, but also one facing a mounting pollution crisis, especially in its capital, Manila. One of the most alarming examples is the Pasig River, once a vital waterway, now dubbed one of the most polluted rivers in the world. Each year, it is estimated that the Pasig dumps over 63,000 tons of plastic into the ocean, making it a major contributor to global marine pollution. According to the Ocean Cleanup Project's 2025 report, the river alone accounts for over 6% of all river-based plastic waste that ends up in the sea. And it's not just the water that's in trouble. The air in Manila is equally dangerous. Recent data from IQ Air in early 2025 shows that PM 2.5 levels regularly exceed 50 micrograms per cubic meter, more than 3 times higher than the World Health Organization's safe limit. This level of pollution doesn't just hang in the air, it invades lungs, increases asthma cases, and puts children and the elderly at severe risk. As a result, millions of Filipinos now live with chronic respiratory issues, and the quality of daily life continues to decline. Whether it's smog obscuring the skyline or plastic choking the rivers, the environmental challenges in the Philippines are both visible and deeply felt. It's a sobering reminder that behind the beauty of the islands lies a reality that demands urgent attention and action. Number 10. Kenya, Nairobi's battle with waste and water. Kenya, and more specifically its bustling capital Nairobi, is facing an environmental storm that's growing harder to ignore. With a population of over 4 million people, the city produces a staggering 22,000 tons of waste every single day. The shocking part? A large portion of it never gets collected or treated properly. Streets, open fields, and even playgrounds have become unofficial dumping grounds, turning urban life into a daily struggle against trash. But the crisis doesn't end there. Nairobi's air is thick with dust from unpaved roads, smoke from burning waste, and fumes from countless vehicles. According to recent data from the Nairobi Air Quality Monitoring Initiative in early 2025, PM 2.5 levels consistently hover above 30 micrograms per cubic meter, which is double the safe limit set by the World Health Organization. Breathing in this air daily is like inhaling toxins straight into the lungs, especially dangerous for children, pregnant women, and the elderly. And when the rain falls, which it often does, things go from bad to worse. With drainage systems clogged by uncollected waste, entire neighborhoods quickly flood. These floods don't just destroy property, they also spread waterborne diseases and create breeding grounds for mosquitoes, putting thousands at risk of cholera, dengue, and malaria. In short, Nairobi is caught in a toxic trap: too much waste, too little management, and a population paying the price. The situation cries out for real investment in infrastructure, environmental policy, and public health. Before this beautiful... Number 9. Brazil. Deforestation, dirty waters, dying lungs. Brazil, a country known for its natural wonders, but also now facing one of the most urgent environmental crises on the planet. In just the year 2024 alone, over 13,000 square kilometers of the Amazon rainforest were destroyed, according to Brazil's National Institute for Space Research. That's an area nearly the size of Lebanon, wiped out in a single year. This massive deforestation doesn't just threaten wildlife or indigenous communities. It fuels global climate change and strips away one of the Earth's most powerful carbon sinks. And while the forest disappears, Brazil's waters suffer too. The Tietê River, which flows through the heart of São Paulo, has become one of the most polluted rivers in Latin America. It's choked with untreated industrial waste and sewage, turning what was once a vital water source into a toxic stream. A 2025 report by the Brazilian Environmental Agency revealed that in some stretches of the river, oxygen levels are so low that aquatic life can't survive. Above ground, the air isn't much better. São Paulo, Brazil's largest city, struggles daily with air pollution levels that often exceed safe limits. PM 2.5 concentrations frequently surpass 25 micrograms per cubic meter, nearly double the World Health Organization's recommendation. For the city's millions of residents, this means increased rates of asthma, heart disease, and other chronic respiratory conditions. In Brazil's case, the crisis is a triple threat: deforestation, dirty air, and dying rivers. And while the consequences are local, the impact is global. The lungs of the earth are gasping, and so are its people. Number 8. China, the cost of industrial might. China remains a global powerhouse, but also one of the most polluted nations on Earth, facing environmental challenges on a staggering scale. In Beijing, despite significant efforts to curb pollution, like reducing coal use and promoting electric vehicles, air quality continues to pose serious health risks. As of early 2025, PM 2.5 levels in the capital still regularly exceed 50 micrograms per cubic meter, more than 3 times higher than the World Health Organization's safe limit. On bad days, stepping outside feels like stepping into a cloud of smoke, with millions forced to wear masks just to breathe. The crisis doesn't end in the air. It flows directly into the sea. The Yangtze River, Asia's longest and China's lifeline, is also one of the world's worst offenders for plastic pollution. A recent report from the Ocean Conservancy revealed that the Yangtze dumps nearly 1,500,000 tons of plastic into the ocean every year, contributing massively to the global marine waste problem. That's equivalent to more than 4,000 tons every single day. On a broader scale, China is also the world's largest emitter of carbon dioxide, accounting for roughly 30% of all global CO2 emissions. While the government has made investments in renewable energy and green technologies, the nation still relies heavily on coal to power its vast industrial sector. So while progress is happening in pockets, the environmental burden remains massive. From choking air and plastic-choked rivers to record-breaking emissions, China's environmental footprint stretches far beyond its borders, impacting not just its own people, but the entire planet. Number 7. Indonesia, paradise in peril. Indonesia, a country of lush jungles and island beauty, now battling a harsh environmental reality. In the capital city Jakarta, the air has become a silent threat. As of early 2025, PM 2.5 levels regularly reach 60 micrograms per cubic meter, according to IQ Air reports. That's 4 times higher than the World Health Organization's safe limit, putting millions of residents at risk for respiratory illness, heart disease, and reduced life expectancy. On most days, the skyline isn't lost in fog, it's buried in smog. But it's not just the air that's under attack. Indonesia's forests, especially in Sumatra and Kalimantan, are disappearing at an alarming rate. In 2024 alone, more than 10,000 square kilometers of rainforest were lost, largely due to illegal logging and palm oil plantation fires. These man-made wildflowers release thick, toxic haze that blankets not only Indonesia, but also neighboring countries like Malaysia and human health. Then there's the Citarum River, located in West Java, a place that's often referred to as one of the most polluted rivers in the world. Once a vital water source, it is now a dark, murky stream, clogged with plastic, heavy metals, and untreated waste from over 2,000 factories along its banks. A United Nations report in 2025 confirmed that toxic chemical levels in the river exceed safety limits by more than 100 times, making the water unsafe for any form of use, drinking, bathing, or farming. Indonesia's environmental story is a warning. When economic expansion comes at the cost of nature, everyone pays the price, in air, in water, and in future generations. The need for reform, regulation, and reforestation has never been more urgent. Number 6. Egypt. Smog over pyramids, pollution in the Nile. Egypt, where the ancient beauty of the pyramids stands in stark contrast to the environmental struggles of today, especially in its capital, Cairo. The city is now one of the most polluted urban centers in the world. According to air quality data from early 2025, PM 2.5 levels in Cairo frequently reach 80 micrograms per cubic meter. That's more than 5 times higher than the World Health Organization's recommended safe limit, and it's taking a serious toll on public health. For millions of residents, simply stepping outside means inhaling harmful particles that can lead to asthma, chronic bronchitis, and even premature death. But the crisis doesn't end with the air. Egypt's lifeline, the Nile River, is under severe threat. Once a symbol of life and prosperity, the Nile is now drowning in pollution. Every year, millions of tons of garbage, raw sewage, and industrial waste are dumped directly into its waters. A recent report by the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency revealed that more than 60% of wastewater in Egypt is discharged untreated, contaminating the river that over 97% of the population depends on for drinking water, farming, and fishing. The consequences are devastating. Waterborne illnesses like hepatitis A, typhoid, and cholera are on the rise, especially in rural communities, where access to clean water is already limited. Add to that the health damage from polluted air, and Egyptians are now facing a dual public health emergency, one in their lungs and the other in their drinking water. Egypt's environmental challenges are no longer tomorrow's problem. They are today's crisis. Without urgent reforms in waste management, water treatment, and pollution control, the cost won't just be measured in lost ecosystems, but in lost lives. Number 5. Nigeria. Lagos choking on trash and fumes. Lagos, Nigeria's fast-growing megacity, is in the grip of a worsening environmental crisis. With a population of over 20 million, the city produces more than 13,000 tons of waste daily, much of which goes uncollected. Overflowing garbage blocks drains, fuels disease, and causes severe flooding during rainy seasons. On top of that, power outages are common, forcing residents to rely on diesel generators. These machines, running day and night, blanket the city in toxic air pollution. As of early 2025, PM 2.5 levels in Lagos often exceed 70 micrograms per cubic meter, nearly 5 times the World Health Organization's safe limit, according to Nigeria's Center for Atmospheric Research. The impact on public health is serious. Residents face rising cases of asthma, chronic cough, and heart disease, with children and the elderly most at risk. The city is literally struggling to breathe. Without urgent action, better waste systems, clean energy, and stronger regulation, Lagos's rapid growth could become its greatest danger. The clock is ticking, and the cost of inaction is growing by the day. Number 4. Afghanistan. Surviving between smoke and scarcity. Afghanistan is facing a deepening environmental crisis that adds to its long-standing struggles. In Kabul, the air is thick with vehicle fumes, dust, and burning trash, pushing the air quality index over 100 and at times reaching 150, dangerous for everyone, especially children and the elderly. Breathing the city's air comes with serious health risks, from asthma to heart disease. Water pollution is just as alarming. In many areas, household and industrial waste is dumped directly into rivers, contaminating vital water sources. A 2025 report by the Afghanistan Urban Water Supply and Sewerage Corporation found that over 70% of Kabul's water is unsafe to drink, fueling outbreaks of diseases like cholera and dysentery. Meanwhile, deforestation is accelerating. Driven by the need for firewood, Afghanistan has lost thousands of hectares of forest annually, according to the United Nations. The result is widespread soil erosion, dust storms, and desertification, stripping the land of fertility and increasing vulnerability to natural disasters. This crisis isn't isolated, it's a chain reaction. Polluted air, dirty water, and disappearing forests are pushing Afghanistan into a deeper public health and ecological emergency. For many, it's a daily choice between toxic air and freezing without fuel, a choice no one should have to make. Number 3. Pakistan. When the air and water turn against you. Lahore, one of Pakistan's largest cities, now ranks among the most polluted cities in the world. As of early 2025, its air quality index frequently exceeds 400, a level considered hazardous for everyone. Breathing this air is like smoking over 20 cigarettes a day, with hospitals reporting sharp increases in asthma, bronchitis, and other lung conditions, especially in children and the elderly. Meanwhile, the Indus River, vital to over 100 million people, is becoming dangerously polluted. A recent study by the Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources found that over 80% of industrial waste is dumped untreated into rivers. The Indus is now laced with sewage, chemicals, and heavy metals, making it unsafe for drinking, farming, or bathing. The result? A nationwide health crisis. Toxic air and poisoned water are fueling respiratory illnesses, heart problems, and widespread waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. In rural areas with limited health care, the effects are even more severe. This isn't just an environmental issue, it's a fight for survival. Clean air and safe water are no longer guarantees in Pakistan. Without urgent reforms in waste management, industrial controls, and clean energy, the damage may soon pass the point of no return. Number 2. India's sacred rivers, poisoned air. In winter, Delhi's air turns deadly. The air quality index often soars past 500, the maximum on the scale. Breathing the air in these conditions is like smoking over 20 cigarettes a day. The thick smog comes from vehicle emissions, industrial activity, dust, and crop burning from neighboring states. Schools close, visibility drops, and simply stepping outside becomes a health risk. But the danger doesn't stop with the air. The Ganges River, sacred to millions, is now one of the most polluted rivers on Earth. Every day, tons of plastic, untreated sewage, and industrial chemicals flow into its waters. A 2025 report by the National Green Tribunal shows less than 1/3 of this wastewater is treated. The river still serves as a lifeline for drinking, cooking, and farming, making illness nearly unavoidable. Across the country, respiratory and digestive diseases are rising fast. From asthma in city slums to outbreaks of cholera and hepatitis in rural towns along the Ganges, the health impacts are nationwide. India is a country full of energy and tradition, but toxic air and poisoned water are threatening its future. Real change is no longer optional, it's essential. Number 1. Bangladesh. Breathing toxic air, living without toilets. Finally, there is Bangladesh, where pollution has reached a critical level, especially in the capital, Dhaka. As of early 25, Dhaka's air quality index often stays above 300, a level considered hazardous by health experts. The air is thick with emissions from traffic, brick kilns, and industrial activity, making it one of the most polluted cities in the world. Breathing in this toxic mix daily poses serious risks, including asthma, lung infections, and heart disease. But the crisis doesn't stop at the air. Millions of people, especially women, lack access to safe toilets, forcing them to defecate outdoors. This not only strips away basic human dignity, but also exposes women to harassment, violence, and disease. A UNICEF report from 2025 estimates that over 1/3 of women in low-income areas live without proper sanitation. Then there's the Buriganga River, which flows through Dhaka, but is now choked with plastic, sewage, and industrial waste. Once a vital water source, it's now a polluted stream that floods during monsoons, spreading contamination across the city. The result? Widespread waterborne illnesses and a city struggling to survive under the weight of its own waste. Bangladesh's pollution crisis is more than numbers. It's a daily reality, affecting millions. As we reach the end of this journey through the world's most polluted and struggling countries, one truth becomes painfully clear. This isn't just about pollution. It's about people. From the toxic air of Delhi and Dhaka to rivers turned into dumping grounds in Lagos and Jakarta, what we're witnessing is not only an ecological disaster, but a humanitarian one. Environmental collapse doesn't just affect landscapes, it affects lives. And while the problem feels global, the solutions begin locally, with governments, international partners, and yes, at NVL Travel Documentary, we believe travel is more than just seeing the world. It's about understanding it. By showing the unseen and telling the untold, we hope to spark awareness and empathy, because when we care, we act. So now, we'd love to hear from you. Which country do you believe needs urgent help the most, and what can be done about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation. And if this documentary gave you a new perspective or made you think differently, consider giving it a like, subscribing to NVL Travel Documentary, or sharing it with someone who needs to see it. Every view, every voice, and every action, no matter how small, counts. Thank you for traveling with us through this eye-opening journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep exploring the world not just for its beauty, but also for its truth.